GM. GM. So, daily levels. Today is Wednesday, 13th of December. Let's take a look at the market. So, Bitcoin continues to grind around near the lows. Got some Bitcoin ecosystem tokens pumping. As Bitcoin itself sort of chops around, holding its 1221 bands, and I suspect it will continue to hold, as bad as it looks. I think it will continue to hold and it make its way back up to 45 or at least into the highs. I don't know if we go parabolic from here, but typically the sell-off through a bull market into the bands. We'll go look back at some examples here. You can go back as far as 2017. You'll see some examples later on in the trend. As long as we hold the bands, it's all good. Even here where we lost the bands briefly, reaccumulated for about a month. So if we start closing outside the bands, that will give me cause for concern there. But otherwise, I think it's just more like this, where we're overextending, coming back into the bands, overextending, coming back into the bands. Here it went quite a bit below them. I don't think that will happen, but you can see here how that can happen and still remain valid. And I think what we're actually seeing here with BTC is probably 40k or 41 or wherever holding at the moment. There's probably not a huge amount of demand there, but there's not a lot of supply, right? Meaning people probably don't want to buy 42k Bitcoin on a dip because they'd like to buy 38. Then we get towards the pivot of 40.8 is held really well all the way. Still holding. So that's clearly a level that has some demand at it. Front running of 40k, I guess would be the case. The question I would have, and you should be asking yourself, is the demand great enough for a 40k Bitcoin to push us to wherever we're going? I think it is. I think there's more than enough demand here to push us back up to 45. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bigger sweep down to come, at which case everybody and their dog will be waiting to buy. Right? That's the best opportunity you could possibly get if it did take another swipe down. 2019, we've seen this one over and over, right? Drops into the bands, chops around for a while, moves higher. Here, you can even lose the bands, dip below them. So there's plenty of examples in bear markets and bull markets of rallies, or as long as the 1 day trend, the daily trend bands hold, you can spend some time retesting them, dipping below them, and it's all generally all still pretty good. So here, no different really. And so what I was saying is, like, at this level, I'm sure there's plenty of people wanting to buy front running 40k, right? That's, I think, a trader's perspective. That 40k, traders think there's going to be demand of 40k, so they step in before 40k. You've also got the options expiry I talked about yesterday, where there's a big options expiry at the end of the month. The highest open interest levels are 40 and 45, and typically high OI can act as a support or resistance heading into that event. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin just stays between 40 and 45 until the end of the year, right? Or at least until the 28th, 29th, whichever day is the Friday. So trading wise, it makes total sense to buy 40,300, 40,004, 40,008. That makes sense. You're front running 40. But that doesn't mean there'll be enough demand there to push us all the way back up. And maybe those traders lose that battle short term eventually. We go lower, and that hits the real demand. And that would be it. That would be the bottom. Why would that be? Well, several things. Like for me, I'm sitting in spot, right? I've got small long left open, but practically just sitting in spot for Bitcoin and for the whole market, just spot. And I would buy more here, right? Why? Because you see it come down. You see it finding demand here. You see that it's not going to fall off a cliff, right? And obviously I never think that way. Anyway, I think the deeper Bitcoin goes, the better. That's how crypto natives think. But TradFi or people who don't typically trade it, they're maybe trading the ETF hype, but they've heard about how volatile this is and how far it can go down, etc., etc., etc. But when Bitcoin is its first real sell-off, and it goes from 44,700 to 40,007, so it goes down $4,000, it goes down 10%. It doesn't nuke, doesn't break any structure, doesn't go down to zero. I think that gives people confidence that, wow, Bitcoin actually is changing. It is becoming less volatile on the downside. Now, of course, eventually it'll have a 40% decline. I just think probably more so the trend in future is going to be that Bitcoin pulls back and distributes slowly that far, has an initial sell-off and then slowly distributes. But here I think there's demand. Not enough for me to buy at these levels outside of just taking on short-term trades. But if we went lower, I think everyone would step in, and that would be it. That would only be if we go lower from here, right? What you don't really want to see is that we push up and then go lower, because that's a rejection. That's not good. So if we pushed up first and actually tested above on the red path, I wouldn't want to see us come back below. So, alts. Total market cap. Looking pretty much the same. Whenever it is, I don't know, but there'll be a rally. Be it from here, be it from one leg lower, but there'll be a rally of some description. And like I mentioned on yesterday's Market Research Live, you want to compare the rally on alts to the rally on Bitcoin. But really, everyone's starting to get a bit fearful. Now's not the time to be fearful. Everyone's starting to talk a little bit like, is it over? I don't think so. I think, especially with Christmas coming up and the holidays, it could be over for Bitcoin, sure. Bitcoin might be done for the year. I think Bitcoin is done for the year, to be honest. I think, if I had to guess, Bitcoin goes to 45, back to 40, but alts outperform. And so, if you look at total 3, which is just the alts, it's back below that 450 level, holding its daily trend. And to me, I think probably setting up for another push. Unless there's some real signs of weakness here, which I don't see yet. If it just continues to hold the trend, last big leg on alts is yet to come. And I think at that point it's probably over. So as long as it stays above this 430, where it roughly broke out from, and the bands stay green, stay inflecting upwards, I think we're going to just see a swift rotation into alts and pump everything that moves. But yeah, that will be late stage things, and that will set off those red flags. So yes, it does mean that you want to be keeping one eye on the exit still and watching how some of these coins are reaccumulating. So Celestia pulled back. Celestia pulled back into the bands here nicely. So everyone's waiting for whenever it's breaking out, everyone wants to buy it. Then it comes back and gives them the entry they wanted, but they don't take it. It's so common. So I like Celestia here. Whether it goes up or down, I don't know. But you had an all-time high breakout, yet again. You have a strong trending asset, closed above the highs. It's back and retested. It's into 1 hour bands here, holding at the 100. Starting to push back up, reclaiming the 50. Now if it goes a little further, right, if it can reclaim that, flip the bands green, hold at the 50, away it'll go for another leg. It's not to say it will happen, but when you're looking for these breakout, retest, here we go, breakout, retest the 100 for the first time, it'll chop and mess around, but that is the low. Pushes up, doesn't go lower, right? So there's a decent chance that this sets up another move on Celestia. It's got momentum. It's got momentum. It's just like it did over here. First big scary pullback, rips all the way up. But Celestia doesn't really trend with impulse. It trends more in a grinding up, rounded out type fashion. Which it's done consistently all the way, and dips get bought pretty consistently, and so I see no reason to suspect anything other than this dip also getting bought, as it seems to be getting bought up right now. Fetch. GM to fetch. Got a lot of noise in this chart for whatever reason. So fetch has done one of these false breakouts, not a false breakout. Typical fetch things. So EMAs, knock those off for a second. First thing, zoom out, daily bands. That close was ridiculous on fetch. Now I'm sure everyone's looking at this like it always does. They're looking again, oh, it's going to fall back into the bands, etc, etc, etc. Not if it's blow off top time, right? Personally, I think if it is actually time, then it's going to run from here. It's running up to these previous highs. That was my drawing from a while back. And eventually, as you can see here, I do think people still round trip their gains. But something else has shifted. Let me just hide this. Something else has shifted in the market. And that is that Injective has made all-time highs. That therefore means all-time highs are on the table for alts. And as I look at fetch, and you notice how it does when it has these big shakeouts, right? It had a nice big shakeout in February. And from the shakeout, got a big extension. Actually didn't get it drawn properly, right? From the shakeout, nice strong push. And the strongest impulse candles tend to come off of a shakeout. So you can see here how it can move when it wants to move. That would actually put it at all-time high. I know it sounds crazy, but once fetch clears this resistance, the all-time high is next in terms of targets. And whether it reaches it or not, I don't know. But I think the incentive is to reach it. Of course, the incentive is to reach it. And since Injective has already done it, I wouldn't be surprised. My original plan is, low, high, higher low, some form of higher high in here, and then a higher low. Definitely possible as well. But I think Fetch is setting up pretty nicely if it can continue the momentum of this week. This week's obviously important. It needs to close strong. So I'd say it needs to close above the high this week, above 6083. If it closes above 6083, I think it's off to the races for Fetch. And you have to understand as well, the market makers and the smart money of all these projects, they're all battling for mind share. So you've already seen BitTensor kind of steal the show, but it's not on any major exchanges. So the reason it got up this high this easily is because it's easy to pump it. Super low float. Right? Low circulating supply. And essentially any buying or selling could move it up or down. But there was no selling because it was all concentrated in the hands of a few people. Very easy to move it up. Not to say anything about the project, it's done well. But in terms of the AI coins, the ones that are on exchanges, major exchanges, AKT, I'm going to cover that in trade of the day. What a fucking chart. Let's hope I don't get to trade of the day and it's at fucking 180 again. Because AKT's a real cock of a coin. Really likes to fuck you around, doesn't it? So, the coins that are on exchanges, none of these. Render, right? So we got Render. Which I'll go to the full charts. It's always hard to find the right chart for Render. Fucking hell. It's like Render was never on an actual exchange. KuCoin usually has them on. There we go. Proper charts. So here's actually quite an interesting little pattern. Although if that was drawn correctly, it would be there. Right? So we're already at it. That's definitely something to keep an eye on for Render. And especially if it gets above there, right? Because when these sort of trend lines and stuff break, that's what a blow off top is. So a lot of people are looking at this probably and saying, right, well, Render's going to, come back to here, reaccumulate, and away we go. Absolutely, could do. I don't think that will happen, by the way. Once the lines become apparent, what's more likely to happen on the pullback is actually that it pulls back and front runs the lower end and then goes. That's how strong trends work. If you've got an actual trend line that the market is respecting and it's really strong, it front runs the last time. Same on both sides, by the way. Same with weakness in bearish trends. But here, right, if you go back and look, Render was doing the same sort of thing back in 2021. Right, we've got your widening mouth channel, pushes up into that level, and then once it gets above that channel mouth, that is your blow off top territory. Right? So remember, these magic lines do not go boing because of anything secret. It's just traders looking at them. Breaking out and above of that basically confirms you're in stupid mode. So we'll see how this goes. So far, it's rejected the first time. But my bet would be Fetch anyway. I think Fetch is a better structure. Right, Render's already significantly above those highs. Has spent a bit of time up there. It could be distributing, or at least losing momentum. Fetch is at equal highs and has a bit more room to run. But what I'm looking at here is how far to all-time high. So Render has 120% to go to all-time high. Let's go to Injective. I think the rally goes into January. How much has Injective gone up since where? Since this, where would I call it from? When did it start running? Over here to here. 48 days. Would that be enough time? Just for reference, right? After breaking out, because this is roughly where a lot of these altcoins are. Injective broke out from its previous accumulation range and ran 182% in 50